All right. Welcome to another edition of Product and Flow podcast, where I talk about product, entrepreneurship, AI, and sometimes meditation and mindfulness. I'm Harpreet, co-CEO, co-founder of Launchable Inc. Today, I interview a good friend of mine, Jagmeet. We went to college together back in the 90s at Pune Institute of Computer Technology. Today, he's the CEO and founder of Certa, which does unified third party management, and it's powered by AI. I know he's big time into AI. Certa has raised a Series B and rapidly growing. Welcome, Jagmeet.
Thanks, Harry. It's always nice to talk to you, Harpreet.
Harry works too.
We used to call Harpreet Harry in college, so it's just stuck.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. People in India called me Harry because Harpreet was too complex, and people here tell me like there are too many Harrys, so they call me Harpreet. So it's the other way around. It's quite interesting.
Yeah, Harry's easy. I've always known you as Harry. That's easy.
All right. So can you tell us a bit about Certa?
Yeah. So uh, you know how when a company tries to work with another company, like either as a vendor or a partner, or even as a client, you may know that you may have felt the pain actually personally that it can take a long time. It goes through a lot of sign-offs. You need to provide a lot of information, a lot of checks that need to happen. And in a typical Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 firm, can actually take
Mhm.
3+ months. And that's the problem that I set out to solve, because I thought that there are a few problems with it. Right, one, it's inefficient. Two, it actually uh, has an it creates an advantage to the larger firms and a disadvantage to some of the
Mm.
startups and smaller firms. And thirdly, I kind of view this, generally this delay of 3 to 6 months as a tax that doesn't need to exist. So as a like a global B2B tax, right? So this is the problem that we solve with Certa. Certa, clients use Certa to manage tens, sometimes hundreds, even hundreds of thousands, sometimes even millions of third parties, and
Mm.
all the compliance, because there's like nuanced compliance globally, in each jurisdiction, each country, etc., right? With all the risk mitigation, you're sharing data, you're sharing privacy, reputation, they're intertwined, etc. And then and now that there's a huge focus on ESG as well, with sustainability.
Mhm.
They want your partners, vendors, distributors, etc., to have a similar, if you will, value system as your company. You don't want to work with someone with completely different like values. So yeah, so in terms of sustainability, in terms of labor laws, ethics, etc. So that's basically what our software enables clients to do, is to work with companies globally, safely, quickly, and efficiently.
Got it. So I must admit, I know about this company since this was a thought in your head, and I never truly appreciated it till I became an entrepreneur myself, and I had to use some of the systems with the other big companies, and I was like, this is what Jagmeet was trying to tell me, what he's trying to solve. So uh, as a small vendor, I now deeply empath- appreciate what you're trying to build.
Yeah, I think, yeah, and what I love about this problem, besides sort of removing the B2B tax and the amount of time it takes, is that it enables companies like our clients to set the standard that they need their vendors, partners, and clients to meet. And that standard's generally hard than the global standard. We work with some of the best firms in the world. So it kind of raises the standards of sustainability, ethics, just
Mm,
privacy laws, etc., globally. So
mm,
absolutely love working on the problem. And I hope we get into AI, because it's just AI is in AI is like completely transformational to this industry, because what happens when two companies work with each other is that there's a lot of unstructured data that's exchanged.
Mm-hmm.
That's a classic Gen AI problem, right? So super excited about really taking this, sort of 10xing the product that we have with
Mm.
all the enhancements that generative AI sort of enables in software.
That sounds exciting. So today, the conversation between you and me is focused on entrepreneurship,
Okay.
and I'm hoping that it's addressed to people who are thinking about starting a problem and
Okay.
starting a company. Sorry, um, like somewhere like maybe a year before you started one, or a year before I started one. There are thoughts kind of going there, and
Yeah.
this is meant to sort of go and talk to those people.
Yeah.
So that's where we'll keep the conversation.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, can you just tell us about your journey to becoming an entrepreneur? I don't think you were born an entrepreneur. I hear you worked as a consultant at some company somewhere, right? So how did you
Yeah.
come about this?
Yeah. My career is, I started as an engineer. Then I basically joined McKinsey Consulting. Did my business school, etc. And then even had a small short stint in private equity
Hmm.
before starting a company. Yeah, I think the reason why I started is I always felt like, um, I mean, especially when I was in the private equity firm, but even while I was at McKinsey, I kind of felt that my tribe is the entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
When sort of a PE VC guy, I was sitting across the table. You know,
Hmm.
at the end of the day, what inspired me the most, and the times that I felt really energized, depended on how many entrepreneurs I met that day.
Hmm. Hmm.
I kind of felt like, oh my God, those are my people.
Hmm.
I wanted to, and I could not wait to kind of to sort of be one of the people, right?
Hmm.
Now, at that time, I'd also recently read like Steve Jobs's book, and Eric Ries's Lean Startup and stuff. So I think I kind of had the inspiration, and then I also had a path
Hmm.
on specifically how to go about building a company. The problem I had identified while I was at McKinsey, I saw my clients struggle with this. And I was like, dude, this, as an engineer, I knew that this was more of a software problem than a consulting problem, because
Hmm.
clients kept throwing consultants at this problem, and I kind of knew
Hmm.
that this should be solved. So all those came together. While I was working as an investor, I kind of felt like I belonged on the other side, because I
Hmm.
really really loved meeting the entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
I was inspired by Steve Jobs, and sort of Eric Ries's book gave me a path to going down this. And then I had a problem in my mind, right? So
Hmm.
it kind of came together, and but Harpreet, I did not know how hard it was going to be. If I had known
Uh-huh.
how hard it was going to be,
Uh.
I don't know if I would have done it.
I think you would have done it because I think there's an element of David versus Goliath
Yeah,
in we are all sort of wired by stories around us to look out for the underdog, and like an entrepreneur is the ultimate underdog,
yeah.
right? And I knowing you, I think there is an element that you find fascinating there. Like that's probably why you found the entrepreneurs to be, your tribe. Is that a fair enough guess?
I need to introspect a little bit more on that. I've just been introspecting, so much on the problems that sometimes introspection on your own personal growth and journey takes a backseat.
Yeah.
But you know me so well, and you also, are such a deep thinker, and you've really gone through this incredible journey of spiritual growth. And when you say something like that, I definitely give it a think, right? I
All right.
definitely. So I mean, intuitively it makes sense, Happy. Right?
Yeah.
100% makes sense, right? Because uh, uh, I mean, because I mean, my entrepreneurship journey is also a bit about journey of perseverance, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so, and perseverance, while it did not make financial sense to persevere,
Right.
right? I had incredible job offers from, you know, Googles of the world, and I, it made no sense for me to persevere, but I had to.
Mm. Mm. So coming back to the problem, um, how did you spot this problem, right? You're a consultant. I'm sure you're kind of talking to various clients, and most people would just sit down and just go work for the next client and then go get the next client and next client. What, how did you spot the problem? And think from a lens of like, advising somebody who's thinking about like entrepreneurship. He's excited as you are. These are my tribe, and he's searching for the problem to go. That's a very common question that people sort of bring up, right?
Yeah, I mean, the initial problem is, Harpreet, as you know, is the hypothesis,
Hmm.
right? So I had a strong hypothesis that working across the boundaries of a company with another company or with like thousands of companies is very challenging. Obviously, the problem,
Hmm.
I mean, I did a whole bunch of in my consulting career, a whole bunch of outsourcing projects,
Hmm.
and there was a huge issue with not just selecting the right company, but then getting all the checks and the sort of all the paperwork and the sign-offs and everything done. And that,
Hmm.
me felt like it had to be, I initially I thought, that whole process should be much faster,
Hmm.
not including the selection, and the sort of the onboarding and the ongoing monitoring, etc. Right? What we focused, I mean, when you start talking to clients, when you try to understand, okay, how big of a pain point is it, how immediate is it a hair on fire type of problem, right? It's just like,
Hmm.
and what I found out is that you know in the first part of my journey, uh, onboarding was the biggest part of the biggest problem that our clients came to us with.
Hmm.
So even though in my hypothesis I thought that searching and finding would be a bigger problem,
Hmm.
but when I sort of dug in and I had massive clients uh,
Hmm.
willing to pay me, pay my company significant fees to solve the onboarding problem.
Hmm.
Actually, Harpreet, I thought, oh, that's not such a complex problem. Why? I mean, that just seems like a silly problem to solve. I want to solve a big problem, right?
Hmm.
I want to solve this. Yeah, I mean, like I want to, and then, but I started with just onboarding,
Hmm.
and I realized later that onboarding third parties is is a massive problem.
Hmm.
It's because every company basically does business with like thousands of other companies, and there's
Hmm.
onboarding going on everywhere. It's just like a
Hmm.
massive universal problem, and
Hmm.
it kind of felt like boring. It's a massive problem. So what we do today is onboarding, and ongoing monitoring, ongoing assessments with with like a compliance and risk lens, right?
Got it. So this
So.
actually reminds me of something that Charlie Munger said once,
Mm,
and I sort of internalized that. He talked about sort of companies need to find their own niches,
mm,
and uh, if you kind of nail down that niche in an ecosystem, you thrive. And your journey is reminding me of that, where like you thought there's a bigger ecosystem, bigger problem, but you found like this sweet niche in there,
yeah,
which becomes the starting point, right?
yeah,
Um, and I think that's sort of one of the lessons when you start the companies to find that niche, right?
yeah. I think your hypothesis often is broader
Yeah.
and grander,
Yeah.
and then when you sort of go into like into it more,
Yeah.
and peeling the different layers of the onion, your clients will tell you what among that space, what is the area of
Right.
the problem,
Right. Right.
right? And then at that time, you have to basically
Hmm.
analyze yourself. Is this problem, this niche, interesting enough for you, big enough for you, et cetera, et cetera?
Right.
So
So
initially, I
how
wasn't sure it was big
right.
enough. Yeah.
So how did you come to the conviction to start Certa then? Like,
Yeah, so it started with I decided that I was going to start a company, and then I pivoted a bit, right? I
yeah.
basically tried a few ideas and pivoted a bit. So the conviction to start a company um, was adjacent to the idea. It was not that I have to solve this problem, hence I want to start a company. It was more like I belong with the entrepreneurs. Like I think those are my people. I want to start a company, and then I have a few hypotheses, and I basically tested a few hypotheses, and this was the strongest one that I found,
Got it.
and then it turned out to be big enough to build a company behind.
Got it. So the outcome that the company drives today is brings on vendors, small and big, onto an existing company's. I don't know what the right word is. Right.
Yeah.
On.
So our clients basically use Certa software
Mhm.
to onboard and ongoing monitor
Hmm.
their tens or hundreds of thousands of third parties.
Got it.
And typically these are vendors, but
Yeah.
these are also distributors, partners, and often clients. So
Okay.
it basically is, you can think of Certa as what we think of it as is the operating system, is the third party operating system.
Hmm.
So it's operating system for companies to work with other companies safely, quickly, efficiently. I
Got it.
mean, taking a step back, right? There are three main stakeholders in a company:
Mm-hmm.
customers, the prospects, etc., right? Employees and third parties, right? Which is
Mm.
vendors, partners, etc. So, for customers, there's Salesforce. For employees, there's Workday and others, and we want to be the third party management system
Got it.
for
Got it. I missed that.
companies, for
For
enterprises.
companies. Okay. So if a customer joins you today, this is for your existing customers, where
Yeah.
are you trying to take them in the next 2 years? What's your unique point of view in the market
Yeah.
that ties them to you?
So it's basically increasing automation, uh, you know, enabling the humans who are working with third party management to be more strategic, to focus on the real sort of problem signals versus versus the noise, right? In this,
Mm-hmm.
and to enable them to basically use their judgment and decision making um,
Mm-hmm.
on the real problems, right? So today what happens is that there's these this massive number of companies that any company works with. Like Hari, literally it's in hundreds of thousands of companies that a
Mm-hmm.
large company work with, right? And what happens is that the people responsible for third party risk compliance and ESG are completely overwhelmed. They're overwhelmed with the onboarding, but then what if there's a new regulation that applies not just to the new companies that you're working with, but also the existing companies, etc. Right? So you know, it's almost impossible. It's not almost, it's impossible to manage without like a serious amount of automation. So the
Right.
journey that we basically take our customers on is a journey of increasing automation, where
Mm-hmm.
the system will do more and more of the work, and the humans will be, a little bit more strategic. They'll basically set the systems, the processes, and sort of come in terms of escalations where judgment is required, right? So at a high level, that's the journey that we put every client on. Now we
Mm.
can start with a small part of the overall like life cycle of a third party, or we can start with one risk area or one compliance area, and then we can, sort of, if you will, go along or take the customer along on the journey towards sort of increasing automation. A lot of the
Got it.
automation now in the future is all, driven by generative AI.
All right. So one last question about Certa before we move on to entrepreneurship. How do people sign up for Certa?
Certa.ai,
Okay.
Certa, Certa, not Certa.ai.
All right.
Yeah, Certa is a mattress company.
All
Uh,
right.
we
I
enable our
think you
clients.
heard this enough for you to clarify this.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm laughing because people think of launchable as lunchables, and I had not thought about that before.
The similarity between us and the mattress company is that we do enable our clients to sleep well at night.
Okay. All right. Okay. So the next set of questions are around entrepreneurship. So the first thing for me that's always on top of my mind is this notion of product market fit,
Yeah.
right? So the first question is, can how did you know you had a product market fit? Like what signals came in?
Yeah, for us, the signals were very strong and early. So we were lucky in that
Hmm.
way. So we had, our first three clients were three of the largest, most recognizable brands in the world when
Yeah.
we were like literally less than 10 people. So, think of, we had a Fortune 100 firm, a 250-year-old firm, and, we had, and we had Uber. So it was incredible, right?
Hmm.
There was clearly there was something there. If all these super sophisticated, very well-run firms
Yeah.
could not find a software to meet their needs and
Hmm.
were relying on a small company like us, that was a massive signal for us.
Right. So
But that's how we
yeah.
found out that, ability to willingness to pay, install, and run this critical business process on our software for me was very, very like a super strong signal that there's something here, guys.
Right. So how did you get to this point, right? So like if you talked about Eric Ries, he talks about signing up a design partner, like
Yeah.
that's the mantra, and you sell and then you then design and then you build. Did you go to these folks with like a slide deck with the idea or mocks, or like you actually had like functioning software or a prototype? Like
Yeah. So I was almost running out of my initial, like, angel money. Like I was trying
uh,
to do ideas. And then one of the companies, that I was friends with a few people there said, yeah, we like your broader idea, but the real immediate problem that I have is onboarding.
uh,
And I was like, okay, that seems boring because I have this grand idea,
right.
right? I'm gonna like
Uh-huh.
do this search and I'm gonna basically enable this connections across the world, and they're like, well, onboarding. But I was out of money and I was like, okay, I'll solve this for you. And
Mm,
sort of getting in and I co-designed this with, with my first client. It
mm,
was truly any of these entrepreneurship journeys involve a lot of luck, right? So
mm,
my first client was turned out to be an incredibly sharp guy who I'm still friends with, quite close friends. He's not with my client anymore,
mm.
and he turned out to be incredibly sharp. And he and I, sitting in various coffee shops and bars in San Francisco, designed this product together.
Okay, that is awesome. That's like a very heavy signal coming in when somebody sits with you and
Yeah,
says, "I have problem enough. Let me tell you how to solve this for
and
me."
I'll pay you for it.
Right, exactly. Mm,
Yeah, and my first, I still remember very clearly, my first, ARR was $40,000.
oh, that is sweet.
It was sweet. It was basically like, it was structured as like a 6-month thing that,
Mm,
okay, you can deliver it with, you can get it live within 6 months. Then we'll extend it by another 6 months, etc. Right?
mm,
So it was
mhm.
super, super sweet. Like it was incredible. And then, so I built the product, co-designed with, this client who's now become a friend of mine and an advisor to the company after that. And then I took it to Uber, and they had the same problem. And then I took it to another firm, and they had the
Right.
same problem. So that's the way it started. Yeah.
Right. So what lesson would you recommend to Jagmeet at that point in time? What could he have done better?
I think um, I think I'll just come back to the same thing, which is it your initial grand vision
Got it.
is likely a hypothesis, and you have to listen to the clients for their problem in that general space.
Got it. Okay. All right. So I call this as, it's almost like paratrooping into a region. Like when paratroopers jump in, they don't exactly land on the spot that they need to sort
Right.
of go nail down. They land and then they hike around and then they find their bearings and then they get to the right place. So
Yeah.
this deeply resonates with the lessons I've learned.
And just to add more drama to that, it's the middle of the night. You're likely in a domain where you don't speak the language, right?
Right.
Because it's like a new industry or it's a new domain. You may or may not speak the language,
Yeah.
right? And you have very limited rations to find the spot.
Right.
And then, use continuing with your analogy, uh, sort of complete your mission. So it's not just finding the problem, which
Right.
is finding the right area, but then you need to take it over. You need to
Right.
fully solve it. You need to have delighted customers
Yeah.
before you run out of money.
Right. Exactly.
That's this.
Yeah. I was interviewing Gurudev, our common friend, and he was telling me about Kaval Rekhi, the
Yeah,
legendary investor, right? He's
yeah,
like, okay, we are giving you enough funds to land into a desert, and we are telling you to come out of the desert, and you have to manage the rations and everything and make that trek. So it's, yeah, exactly that, right?
yeah,
So then, all right, so we are 30 minutes in. So I'm going to go to a few other questions. So you built an engineering organization from India.
yeah.
It's a fairly common thing. How did you come about this decision, and how did you? So if somebody's starting that today, how would they go about doing this?
Yeah. So I built it in India because I pretty much didn't had I raised very minimal funds initially. I had to survive
Hmm.
on those. So it was basically, and then for a few years, yeah, the VC money ran out, and we had to just bootstrap the company for
Hmm.
sort of the angel money ran out. Sorry, and we just had to
Hmm.
bootstrap it, right? So it
Hmm.
was need based for me, and the what would you see the a lot of things have changed in the new age of generative AI.
Hmm.
I do think that if you find the right partner who's willing to sort of go on this agile journey with you, I don't think it matters whether the person is, if you will, like I think the right person wherever the person is based
Hmm.
is 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 much more so. Right person is much more important than where the person is based, because the right person will be potentially significantly more productive because of all the generative AI tools than someone else, right?
Hmm.
Now, um, it's definitely much, much more helpful to spend significant amount of time in person with the person, with your initial team.
Hmm.
So, given that, if you can afford it, I would start with a small team co-located,
All right.
and I wouldn't start the way I did. I didn't have a choice.
Hmm.
And then again, I got lucky, finding a great engineering leader who was able
Hmm.
to take this sort of, forward for me. So initially, I found incredible engineers, and
Hmm.
once we were getting to a stage where we absolutely needed an engineering leader, I was lucky to find one.
Got it. Got it. We had somewhat of a similar story ourselves, or what you say kind of echoes. We had to start people in Japan, and we found a great leader there as well. So in the last year or two, I think you've been sort of scaling fairly rapidly. You're growing pretty big, and that's one of the things that here be dragons. Um, so as you've scaled, you've picked up some scars and some things have worked. Like what lessons would you want to pass people to others around scaling? So if they are in Series A, they're headed towards a Series B, and they're growing their organization.
Yeah.
What are some of the things that you've learned?
I think few things. One, um, finding the right in scaling, the game and the answer is always going to be finding the right VP,
Hmm.
finding the right lead for the for that function is the
Okay.
only way to scale. Right? I just don't know any other way. Right? How until you find the right person for a function, do it yourself. Like
Okay.
it's don't just trust your gut. You know, just you know, rely on do a huge amount of back channel references. And but sort of make sure that you're hiring someone who's already done it before. So
Hmm.
do all the basics, but also trust your gut. And until you find that person, do the function yourself,
Got it.
because it will set you back a year if you find the wrong VP. Now, two wrong VPs, your company's dead.
Hmm.
So, um, so it's a high beta situation, right?
Right.
Um, Rely on your network. Number two, in all of this, as you sort of bring people on board, you might think, and it's probably true, they know their function better than you.
Right.
As you bring that, so hire the right salesperson. They will for sure know the sales better than you. You hope so, right? Otherwise, you
Yeah.
found the wrong person. But if you find the right person, but don't be hands off at that time.
Yeah.
You gotta, they don't know the domain as well as you, they don't know the product as well as you, they don't have the history, the scar tissues, the learnings, all that. You have to really, the wrong term is micromanage, but you have
Hmm.
to be very, very close.
Right.
Ben Horowitz talks about this very eloquently, that
Hmm.
he basically just says, you have to micromanage initially for the first
All
few
right.
months.
Yeah.
And Ali, co-founder and CEO of Databricks, uh,
Hmm.
he has this thing where for the first, I think, like 2 to 3 months, he will talk to the new hire every day, every
Hmm.
single. He just
Got it.
is very close.
Yeah. I think that's valuable enough. Like this, um, you need to get a sense of the person on the ground to see if they know what they're talking about, right? And I find this very interesting in the sales organization, especially the reason somebody is in sales is because they can sell.
Mhm.
So when you talk to, especially when you hire like somebody in sales, those guys can pitch very easily.
Yeah,
They know to showcase themselves very well, which is a good thing.
yeah,
But then till you are in the weeds with themselves, you kind of don't get a visceral feel of how things are actually working out, right?
yeah,
How they would work out, right? All
yeah.
right.
And I mean, and the track record and everything is super, super, super interesting. And some of the really one very valuable um, insight that I got from my investor of mine, really super sharp entrepreneur, multi-billion dollar exit in the past, is that you need for sales, find someone who sold something that's as hard as your thing is to sell or harder.
Right.
But there are many things that are much easier to sell. You
Yeah.
know, so
Yeah.
if they're sold in a stage and sort of the
Right.
category that's hard to sell,
Right.
then they'll know what it takes.
Yeah. You also, I'll bring this out because I think you referenced it as well, is they have done this before. So that means they have been in that stage before.
Stage is very important.
The
Stage
stage
is
is
more important than domain.
right. Yeah. Okay. Stage is important then domain. That's an interesting lens. Okay. All right. It's sort of bringing me to the tail end of the conversation. So one question wanted to ask is, if somebody's starting today, how should they think about fundraising? What's your opinion here?
Yeah. So, um, Mike Andrew, Mark Andreessen has been talking a bit about, one person being able to do $1 billion, like a
Mm,
unicorn, right? So I do think that the leverage is growing significantly. And, the first thing you should look at it, I mean, fundraising is exhausting and it's super time consuming, and
right.
it takes away from the primary job that basically creates value in a company, which is serving clients, and building product, and sort of getting your word out there, right? So it takes away from that primary job. So I would say, I think the way I would go about it is raise try to raise an initial amount of money, and then not raise again, and just basically try to be more efficient using
Okay.
robots, like using Gen AI,
Right.
and then just be heavily on that. Like what, like the one of the companies that I like very much, in new companies, Perplexity, right? They have
Yeah.
this about, they just use heavily, they use like generative AI in every single function, and they try to scale up, remain a small team and scale up, not with people, but with AI robots, which I
Right.
think is going to be more and more increasingly possible. So I think the optimal strategy is, some startup capital, I don't know, like 3 to 5 million, and
Yeah.
then run it like you will never have to raise again.
Got it. All right. Okay. I think that is a very valuable piece of advice. So with that, I'm going to call this interview done. Thank you, Jagmeet,
Thanks, Ari.
and good to see you as always. And
Good.
stop
Good to catch up before your big vacation to Norway.